Why was everyone staring at her like she didn't belong there? Riley Matthews kept her eyes on the papers scattered across the concrete floor, pretending not to feel the heat of a dozen mocking stares. The morning sun at Fort Bragg cut through the training yard like a scalpel, harsh, unfiltered, exposing everything. Dust hung in the air, shimmering around the shooting range where the best snipers in the country had just failed, 13 times in a row. The shot had been called impossible. 4,216 meters. A crosswind strong enough to knock a bullet off course by a building's width. But the general didn't care about physics. He cared about results. Is there a single real sniper in this entire facility? General Marcus Reeves roared, his voice echoing across the range like a storm. 32 years in uniform. A man who'd watched soldiers rise and crumble. His patience was gone. We've got men dying overseas while you clowns can't hit a stationary target. Laughter rippled through the assembled operators, hard men, battle-seasoned. And then came the voice that sliced through everything. Get away from here, you pathetic desk clerk. Jake Morrison, Navy SEAL, 6'2", head shaved to a glare. The kind of man whose presence filled a room even when he wasn't talking. His eyes cold, blue, cutting, locked on Riley as if she were an infection that needed removal. This range is for soldiers, not paper pushers, he barked. The clipboard in her hands went flying, crashing to the concrete, papers scattering like wounded birds. She bent down quietly, collecting them, one by one, her fingers trembling. Everyone thought it was fear. It was. Some tremors never stop, not because of nerves but because of damage. Invisible scars in muscle and mind that medicine can't fix. Riley's hands shook because they always had since that night in the mountains, but she said nothing. She never did. Across the yard, Reeves' jaw clenched. We've got 48 hours to qualify a shot. 3 CIA assets in Syria are set for execution. No long-range confirmation, no rescue. He slammed his hand on the table. Find me someone who can make that shot, or I'll find someone who can replace you. The silence afterward was a living thing. Jake turned back to his men, his voice dripping with contempt. You hear that? Maybe the supply girl here wants a turn. Derek Hayes, younger, cockier, laughed. Hell, I'll record it for morale training. He raised his phone. Watch this, Fort Bragg's comedy hour. Marcus Webb tossed an empty magazine at Riley's boots. Fetch, little puppy. The laughter came again, sharper now. She didn't look up, just gathered the papers, stacking them neatly, every motion deliberate, calm. Then she did something that stopped even the laughter for a heartbeat. She stood, looked straight at General Reeves, and said clearly, evenly, "Permission to attempt the shot, sir." The words hung there like a crack in the air. For 3 seconds, the entire base seemed to hold its breath. Then the explosion of laughter came back, louder, crueler. Jake's voice led the charge. That rifle weighs 30 pounds. Your shaking hands couldn't hold coffee steady. But Riley had already started walking toward the firing line. Every step was quiet, measured, the kind of movement that doesn't beg for permission. The general raised his hand. Let her try, he said finally. Jake spun, disbelief written across his face. Sir, you can't be serious. Reeves' eyes didn't leave Riley. What's the worst that happens? She misses like the rest of you. The laughter died. The air changed. Riley stopped at the firing platform. The massive sniper rifle gleamed in the sunlight, a weapon few people on Earth could handle properly. She placed her trembling hands on the cold steel, like a pianist touching an old instrument she hadn't played in years. From her pocket she pulled out a small bottle, not standard meds. The label had been scratched off. She opened it with the same calm as before, took 2 pills, dry swallowed, and waited. Jake muttered under his breath, "Great, she's drugged now." But Reeves noticed the stillness that followed. The tremor didn't stop, but it changed, became rhythmic, almost like her body had found harmony with it. Her movements grew precise, practiced. She adjusted the scope, not even glancing at the numbers. Her hands moved with memory, not thought. 4,216 meters, she whispered. Crosswind 15.3 from northwest. Drop temperature 2 degrees. Pressure falling. Coriolis shift 673 milliseconds. The spotter beside her blinked. Those weren't the guesses of a rookie. Those were the calculations of someone who'd done this thousands of times. Who taught her that? Someone whispered. Riley didn't answer. She couldn't hear them anymore. Her world had narrowed to a barrel, a breath, a heartbeat. General Reeves stepped closer to the glass observation booth, studying her posture. He'd seen that stance before. Somewhere. But where? Jake still paced behind him, muttering, "This is insane. Every minute we waste here, those hostages get closer to being executed." It wasn't just professional frustration. For Jake Morrison, this was personal. 2 years ago, his wife, Sarah Morrison, had been one of the few women to pass sniper selection. She died in Afghanistan during an operation that went wrong. He hadn't forgiven himself since. And now this trembling supply clerk was standing where Sarah once stood, trying to do what Sarah had trained her whole life to do. It burned him. Riley steadied her breath. 4 counts in, hold, 4 counts out, hold. Her lips moved silently. Numbers, rhythm, prayer, no one could tell. Then, in the space between heartbeats, she squeezed. The rifle's thunder ripped through the air, a physical wave that punched the breath from lungs. The echo rolled across the base like a drumbeat of fate. 3 seconds. That's how long the bullet took to travel. 3 seconds that stretched like eternity. 3 seconds where laughter died and belief wavered. Then impact. The spotter's voice cracked. Dead center, 4,216 meters. Silence. Not disbelief, silence so pure it felt holy. Phone slipped from hands, bets forgotten. Jake Morrison's sneer froze and fell away, replaced by something raw, shock, maybe fear. Riley stood, her hands trembling again, the tremor returning now that it no longer had purpose. She turned toward Jake. Her voice was steady, almost too calm. October 23rd, 0200 hours, Helmand Province. Your team was pinned down by 8 hostiles on elevated terrain. You had 3 wounded, no air support. Jake's face drained of color. You. I was the shooter, Riley said quietly. 7 shots, 7 kills, all from 1,600 meters, complete darkness. You never saw me. Command told you it was a guardian angel. The range went still again. Someone dropped their magazine. Someone else whispered, "No, that's impossible." Ghost unit, Reeves breathed. Riley's green eyes flickered toward him. Operation Nightfall, maybe you've heard of it. The name hit like a gunshot. Even the cockiest operators went pale. Everyone had heard of Nightfall, the mission that never existed. 8 of the best snipers ever trained sent into the dark. None came back. Except one. The general took a step forward, his voice low. Matthews Ghost 7. Riley reached under her uniform, pulled out dog tags worn, scorched, old, not hers. The name made Jake Morrison stumble backward like he'd been hit. Sarah Morrison. His wife's name. No, Jake whispered. That's not possible, Sarah. She was. His voice broke. She volunteered, Riley said. Your wife was Ghost 6. She died in my arms. Jake's legs gave out. The 6'2" commander dropped to his knees, eyes glassy, as Riley placed the tags on the table. The wind outside carried the faint metallic sound, like the echo of ghosts. Riley's trembling hands brushed against her sleeve, revealing a web of pale scars, surgical, deliberate, not random. The kind you get when someone tries to put a person back together. I died too, she whispered. 4 minutes 37 seconds, they brought me back. Reeves' face tightened. Ma'am, what are you? Riley looked at him. and for the first time, something like emotion cracked her controlled voice. "Broken," she said, "but not finished." The silence that followed felt alive, pulsing with unspoken questions, unshed tears, and the ghost of a scream buried 18 months deep. Somewhere behind them a phone began to ring. The sound was sharp, shrill, cutting through the heavy air. Reeves glanced at his aide. "Answer it." The aide froze. "Sir, it's coming from the secure line." Reeves frowned. That line was for active operations only. He stepped forward, snatched the receiver, and the blood drained from his face. A distorted voice filled the room. "We have them, the 12 ghosts you left behind, alive but not for long." The connection cut. The line went dead. And every man in that room turned to look at the trembling woman who had just hit the impossible shot. Her green eyes had gone still. No fear, no hesitation, just one thought, one choice. She whispered it so quietly only the general heard. "Then I'm going back." What happens to a soldier who dies once, but keeps waking up? Riley Matthews stared at the phone still swaying on its cord, the words echoing in her mind. "We have them. The 12 ghosts you left behind." She didn't speak, didn't move. Around her, chaos had already erupted. Orders shouted, radios crackling. Jake Morrison packing like a caged animal, half mad with disbelief. General Reeves barking commands to secure the line, trace the signal, find whoever had just torn open 18 months of silence. But Riley heard none of it. The sound inside her head was quieter, the faint heartbeat of memory. Cave screams, gunfire. The smell of burned sand and iron blood. She blinked and the shooting range blurred. The present and past folded together like two overlapping films. Someone was touching her shoulder. "Matthews, Riley, hey." Jake's voice, broken, angry, desperate. He grabbed her arm. "You're telling me my wife is alive? That message, was that her?" Riley's eyes lifted to his. There was no comfort there, no hope either, only truth. "They kept them alive," she said quietly. "For leverage, for whatever game this is." Jake's breath came out in a ragged laugh. "You're lying. You people lie for a living." Reeves slammed his palm down on the table. "Enough." His voice cut through the tension. "We need intel. Matthews, start talking." She nodded once, then did something that froze every man in that room. She pulled a small, black-coated device from her jacket pocket, military hardware none of them recognized, and pressed her thumb against it. A holographic screen flickered to life, projected in blue light. Encrypted channels, coordinates, mission logs marked top secret /eyes only /nightfall. "What the hell is that?" Jake demanded. "My insurance," Riley said softly. "I kept everything they tried to erase." The general leaned forward, eyes scanning the files. Every page was a wound reopened. Ghost unit deployment maps, signal intercepts, medical logs signed by people who weren't supposed to exist. "Operation Nightfall," Riley said. "They told you it was a rescue. It was." Her voice didn't shake, but there was weight behind every syllable, the kind of weight that came from carrying it too long. "We were sent to intercept an arms convoy tied to a weapons dealer network in Helmand. Intel said Taliban, but the payload wasn't weapons. It was American tech, our own, being sold back to them." Jake's expression shifted, confusion, horror. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Riley tilted her head slightly. "We weren't ambushed by accident. Someone moved our drop point 30 minutes before launch. Someone inside command. They knew exactly where we'd land." Reeves straightened, his jaw tightening. "Who authorized that change?" "That's what I've been hunting for since the day they buried me." The words landed like shrapnel. "Buried me." She opened another file. This one was worse. Encrypted financial transfers between private contractors, front companies, and a name that made Reeves go still. "Blake," he whispered. Jake blinked. "Warren Blake, my." Your friend, Riley finished. Deputy Director of Operations, best man at your wedding. Jake stepped back as if struck. No, Warren's he's not. One of them, Riley said. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The only sound was the hum of the projector, casting pale light across faces that had seen too much and understood too little. Finally, Reeves asked quietly, "Why come here? Why expose yourself now?" "Because the 12 they captured are bait," she said, "and they just sent the hook." Her eyes lifted toward the range window. Beyond it, sunlight burned the concrete white, too bright, too clean for the things being said inside. Jake's voice broke through again, rough. "You think I'm just going to sit here? My wife is alive somewhere because of this conspiracy." Riley turned toward him, and for the first time, anger cracked through her calm. "She's alive because I didn't break cover, because I let her walk into that trap instead of blowing the entire operation to warn her." The words hit like bullets. Jake's breath caught. "You let her." "I tried to save her." Riley's voice rose, shaking for the first time. "Do you have any idea what that means? I watched her team get slaughtered while I stayed hidden because one transmission could have exposed the mole. I held position for 72 hours while your wife bled out in my arms. You think I don't replay that every time I close my eyes?" The silence that followed wasn't just quiet, it was judgment. Reeves exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. "All right, we'll verify the intel. Matthews, you're confined to base until we—" "No," she cut him off. "They've got a 48-hour window. We move now or they die." Jake barked a laugh. "You're not leading any mission. You're a supply clerk, remember." Her gaze didn't waver. "That's what they made me, but it's not what I am." She reached into her sleeve, rolled it up higher. The scars there were different this time, smaller, uniform, precise. Injection sites. "What are those?" Reeves asked quietly. "Experiments," she said. "Part of Nightfall's real objective. They weren't just testing weapons, they were testing us." No one spoke. Even the air seemed to hesitate. "They called it Avatar Protocol. Gene modification, chemical enhancement. We volunteered, thought it was performance boosters. It was. It was rewriting our biology." Jake's voice dropped. "That's insane." Riley met his eyes. "So was bringing people back from the dead." She lifted her trembling hand. "These shakes, not nerves. My body's still fighting what they put in me." The projector flickered again, medical charts now. Blood panels labeled Subject 7. "Subject 7, Reeves read aloud. His face went pale. "That's you." "Yes," she whispered, "Ghost 7. A tremor rippled through her voice, not of fear but memory. "The serum gave us endurance, clarity, enhanced reflexes for a while. Then it started killing us. Organ failure, neural decay. I survived because my body rejected it slowly." She paused, swallowing hard. "The others weren't so lucky." The room was silent except for the hum of machines. Even Jake, who had spent his life fighting death, looked shaken. "So that's what Nightfall was," Reeves murmured. "Not a mission, a lab test." "Field experiment," Riley corrected. "And when we found out, they buried it and us with it." Her eyes met his. "You want to trace that signal. You already know who's on the other end." Reeves didn't answer. He didn't have to. They all knew. Jake turned away, running a hand through his hair, breathing like a man drowning. "You expect me to believe this? That my wife was part of some science fiction nightmare?" Riley looked at him, her voice soft again. "Believe what you want, but she volunteered because she believed in something bigger than herself. Same as you, same as me." For a second, the tremor in her hand seemed to ease. She reached for the dog tag still on the table, brushed her thumb across Sarah's engraved name. "She wanted to come home," she whispered. "That's all she talked about." Jake's jaw tightened. "Then we bring her home." Riley looked up. "You mean I bring her home, alone?" "Like hell." "You don't understand," she said. "They're not holding her for ransom. They're waiting for me. If they see you coming, they'll kill them all. I'm the bait. Reeves stepped forward, voice firm. We don't negotiate with terrorists. This isn't negotiation, Riley said. It's penance. Her tone softened again, almost reflective, the voice of someone speaking not to others but to herself. Maybe that's why they brought me back. Not to fight, not to win, just to finish what I started, to give the dead a reason they died. Jake turned away, his shoulders rigid. You think you're some kind of martyr? No, she said. I think I'm the last witness. Outside, the afternoon light shifted, long shadows crawling across the range floor. Reeves rubbed his chin, voice quieter now. If we authorize a mission, we need proof. You've got any idea where they're keeping them? Riley opened another file. Satellite feed, coordinates, a desert facility, Syria. They sent the signal from here. Jake leaned in, scanning the image. That's fortified, anti-air heavy guards, that's suicide. She didn't flinch. Then it's familiar territory. Reeves studied her face, the calm, the tremor, the exhaustion buried under control. You really died out there, didn't you? He asked quietly. Riley nodded once. 4 minutes, 37 seconds, it's long enough to see what waits after, but they dragged me back, and now I think I know why. Why? She met his gaze, green eyes reflecting something between faith and defiance. Because someone has to end this. The general hesitated. He'd seen courage before, reckless, wild, self-destructive, but this was different. This was quiet, heavy, the kind that comes from people who have already made peace with dying. The door to the command office slammed open. A uniformed officer rushed in, breathless. Sir, 3 unmarked SUVs just cleared the gate. CIA credentials. They're asking for you. Reeves frowned. At this hour? Riley didn't move, didn't even blink. Blake, she said softly. Jake's head snapped up. What? She looked toward the doorway. He's here. The words felt like ice in the room. Reeves squared his shoulders. All right, bring him in. Jake was still shaking his head, disbelief trying to fight through dread. There's no way, Warren's my friend. But the look on Riley's face stopped him cold. The kind of look that said she'd already seen this ending once before. Outside, tires crunched on gravel. Engines idled. And the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the hall like the beginning of something none of them were ready to face. Why did his smile look the same when everything else had changed? The door opened, and Warren Blake walked in like he owned the place. Perfect suit, polished shoes, the kind of confidence that came from years of pulling strings in the dark. 2 men flanked him, black suits, mirrored sunglasses, hands never far from the weapons under their jackets. The air changed. Every soldier in the room felt it, the unnatural stillness that comes before violence. General Reeves, Blake greeted, voice smooth as oil. Apologies for the sudden visit. I heard there was a disturbance on your range. He didn't look at anyone else. Not yet, not until his gaze finally found her. Miss Matthews, isn't it? He said, smiling with polite warmth that didn't touch his eyes. I think we need to have a little chat. Riley's pulse didn't change. Her trembling hands rested on the table still, controlled. Hello, Warren, she said softly. For just a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. It was their recognition, surprise, a ghost of fear. Then the politician returned. I'm sorry, have we met? Reeves stepped between them. Deputy Director Blake, this is a military installation. You don't just walk into my command and start questioning personnel. Blake's smile didn't fade. Of course, General, but Miss Matthews isn't one of your personnel. She's a problem. He produced a file, sliding it across the table. Unstable psychological history, fabricated service record, false credentials, PTSD-induced delusions about classified operations that never happened. Jake stared at the folder, his breath quickening. Warren, what the hell are you talking about? Blake turned his charm toward him. Jake, You know I've always got your back, but your friend here, he motioned toward Riley, she's not who you think she is. Riley tilted her head slightly. That's ironic, coming from the man who sent Ghost Unit to die. The words dropped like lead. Blake's smile twitched. Excuse me. October 26th, she said. You called me personally, said there was a last-minute adjustment to our insertion point. Same calm tone, same fake concern in your voice. The room fell silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause. Jake's voice cracked. Warren, tell me she's lying. Blake's eyes flicked toward him, then back to Riley. That's quite a story, he said finally, tone still light but thinner now. You really should get help, Miss Matthews. Delusions like that can be dangerous. Riley smiled faintly, an expression that didn't reach her eyes. That's why I recorded everything. She reached into her jacket, pulling out a small device no bigger than a flash drive. 18 months of evidence. Every order you gave, every encrypted message you rerouted, every payment that led to dead soldiers. It's all here. Blake didn't move, but the men behind him did. One step forward, hands on weapons. In an instant, 20 other weapons were raised in response. Derek Hayes, Marcus Webb, even the recruits who'd mocked Riley minutes ago now stood with her. The sound of safeties clicking off filled the room. General Reeves' voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Weapons down, all of you. Nobody moved. Blake exhaled slowly, straightening his tie. You don't know what you're playing with, Matthews. That drive you're holding, if it ever goes public, the people it implicates will tear this country apart. Riley's tone was soft, even compassionate. You already did. Something changed in Blake's eyes. The charm fell away. What replaced it was cold, predatory. You have no idea what we've built. The network doesn't end with me. Then it dies with me, she said. And before anyone could react, she flicked the switch on the device. A faint green light blinked once, then pulsed steadily. Dead man's switch, she said. If I don't enter a code every 12 hours, all of it, communications, financials, video footage, gets sent to 12 different countries. For the first time, Warren Blake looked afraid. You think you can threaten me? Riley's voice was calm. No, I think I can end you. Then everything happened at once. Blake's hand moved toward his jacket. Riley moved faster. The sound was a blur, a slap of motion, a twist of wrist, the crack of impact as his pistol hit the floor. In one motion, she had him pinned against the wall, his own momentum used against him. The men behind him reached for their weapons, only to find themselves staring down the barrels of Delta and SEAL sidearms. Jake Morrison's voice was a low growl. Don't. Reeves stepped forward, eyes wide. Matthews, stand down. Riley didn't. Her voice was barely a whisper. You sent them to die, Warren. You sent Sarah. Blake's face twisted in pain and defiance. Collateral damage, that's all she was. You all were. Jake's fist connected before thought caught up to rage. The punch echoed across concrete, sending Blake sprawling to the floor, blood smearing his perfect suit. Nobody stopped him. For the first time since the range incident began, silence didn't feel heavy. It felt deserved. Blake spat blood, smirking through the pain. You can't stop it. You think exposing me ends this. We've been perfecting the serum for years. You were just a prototype, Matthews, a failed one. The room froze. Jake turned toward Riley. What is he talking about? Riley didn't answer immediately. Her eyes had gone distant again, as if looking into a place none of them could follow. Tell them, Blake sneered. Tell them what you are. Reeves took a step forward, his voice careful. Riley, what's he saying? She looked down at her hands, the trembling that never stopped, the scars tracing her veins like road maps of pain. He's saying the tremor isn't nerve damage. She took a slow breath. It's rejection. Reeves frowned. Rejection of what? Of the serum. The genetic cocktail they pumped into Ghost Unit. It was supposed to create perfect soldiers, enhanced, tireless, fearless. Jake's voice cracked. You're saying my wife was. One of us, Riley finished. We all were. She lifted her arm higher, showing the faint blue tracery under her skin. Most of them died in days. Organ failure, brain hemorrhages. I didn't. My body adapted, imperfectly. Jake backed away, shaking his head. So you're not human. Her voice broke just slightly. I thought I was. I still do. But I guess that depends on what you think being human means. Reeves swallowed hard. What did the program call it? Avatar Protocol. The words alone carried weight. The kind of phrase whispered only in black-budget corridors, the kind of project no one wanted to admit existed. Blake chuckled weakly, blood staining his teeth. She's not one of you, General. She's property, a weapon that learned how to cry. Riley knelt beside him. Her green eyes met his, unflinching. Maybe, but I also learned how to choose. His smirk faded. She picked up his fallen weapon, ejected the magazine, and set both on the table, deliberate, slow, controlled. You want to talk about evolution, Warren. Evolution means letting go of what doesn't deserve to survive. The general finally found his voice. Matthews, you're under my command. You will not engage that man again. That's an order. Riley looked at him. Then relieve me, sir. It wasn't defiance. It was exhaustion. The quiet acceptance of someone who'd already crossed the line and knew there was no going back. Reeves hesitated. For a long second he saw her not as a soldier or an experiment or even a woman, but as something in between, something painfully human despite everything that said she shouldn't be. He lowered his voice. What do you plan to do? Finish this. How? By doing what they built me for, she said softly. Except this time I'll choose my own target. Jake stepped forward, torn between fury and faith. You think I'm letting you walk out of here? You don't get to let me, she said gently. You already did. She turned to leave, but froze when the secure phone began ringing again. Reeves hesitated, then answered. The voice that came through was distorted, mechanical but clear. Ghost 7, we know you're listening. You have 48 hours. Come alone to the coordinates we sent or the prisoners die, all of them. The line cut. No negotiation, no demands, just a countdown. Riley stood there, staring at the phone like it was an old friend calling from a grave. Jake's voice was raw. You're not actually considering going, are you? She looked at him, eyes glinting with something that wasn't quite resolve, more like inevitability. They're not after you, Jake. They're after me. Always were. And if it's a trap, then I spring it. Her voice softened again, like a whisper carried through the dust. Someone has to face the ghosts, might as well be the one who made them. Reeves closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, the general was gone. What remained was a man who'd buried too many soldiers and didn't want to add one more name to the list. You'll need a plane, he said quietly. Jake turned toward him, incredulous. You can't be serious. Reeves' expression didn't change. You think you can stop her? No one could. Riley looked between them. I'll need intel, off-books transport, and a signal jammer. Reeves nodded once. You'll have it. She turned toward Jake. And you'll stay out of this. He stepped closer, eyes blazing. She's my wife. Riley's answer was almost a whisper. She was. What's left of her, we'll find out. Then she walked away. Not fast, not dramatic, just a quiet march down a corridor lit by sterile white light, her silhouette small, her shadow long. Jake stood frozen, his fists trembling. Reeves laid a hand on his shoulder. Don't, he said. But Jake's eyes were locked on that shrinking figure. You really think she's coming back? Reeves' voice was soft, almost reverent. People like her don't come back, son. They finish the mission. The door closed behind her, with a metallic echo that lingered long after she was gone. And somewhere far across the desert, 12 prisoners knelt in silence as a camera light flicked on. 47 hours, the voice said. Time starts now. How many times can a soldier die before it finally counts? Riley sat alone in the armory, light from a single overhead bulb flickering against steel and shadow. Rows of weapons stretched out in front of her like ghosts of old wars, silent, waiting. She'd been here before, this room, this quiet, but it felt different now. Maybe because this time she wasn't preparing for survival, she was preparing for consequence. Every motion was methodical: select, inspect, load. Her trembling hands worked in rhythm, the tremor no longer something she fought, but something she moved with, a companion that reminded her she was still alive, still imperfect. Each magazine she filled echoed softly in the room, like the ticking of a clock counting down to the end. Somewhere behind her, a voice spoke. "You really think you're walking out of this, don't you?" She didn't turn. "No," she said, "I just think walking in is worth it." Jake Morrison stepped out from the doorway, arms crossed, eyes hollow. He hadn't slept. The circles under his eyes made him look older, heavier, as if the truth itself had added years to him. He picked up a rifle from the rack, turning it in his hands. "They taught us to follow orders, not ghosts." Riley's voice was quiet. "Maybe that's the problem." Jake studied her like he was trying to find the lie, the weakness, the thing that made her human enough to hate. But all he saw was stillness, the kind that scared him more than rage ever could. "You really believe she's alive?" she asked. His jaw tightened. "I saw her on that video." "You saw a body with her face. That's not the same thing." He set the rifle down, the sound sharp in the quiet. "You're saying she's gone." "I'm saying whoever left in that cell isn't the woman you remember. The serum, the conditioning, 18 months of pain changes people. She might not even know you." Jake exhaled, the air catching in his throat. "Then I'll remind her." Riley looked up finally, meeting his eyes. "Don't make the mistake I did." "What mistake?" "Believing I could save everyone." He didn't answer, just looked at her trembling hands, at the scars running along her forearm like topographical lines of suffering. "Does it hurt?" "All the time," she said softly, "but it keeps me grounded." Jake shook his head. "You talk like someone already buried." Riley smiled faintly. "Maybe I was." A soft knock broke the silence. Derek Hayes stood at the doorway, his usual smirk gone. He looked younger now, stripped of bravado. "General says you've got a plane in 2 hours," he said. "Unmarked, civilian strip." Riley nodded. Derek hesitated. "I'm coming." "No," she said instantly. "Yes," he countered. "You've seen the video, my brother there." "Your brother's gone, Derek." "You don't know that." Riley's eyes softened. "I do, I saw him die." He took a step closer, jaw set. "Then you owe me the chance to see it too." For a long second, they just stared at each other, soldier and survivor, two people carrying the same ghost in different shapes. Finally, Riley nodded once. "Then you follow orders. You don't improvise, you don't play hero." "I'll follow you," he said. "That's enough." Behind him, Marcus Webb and Torres entered, quiet, watchful. More followed. Men who had mocked her hours ago now standing like volunteers at a funeral. Riley looked at them, 20 soldiers, all off the record, all with the same grim understanding in their eyes. "This isn't a rescue mission," she said. "It's a reckoning, you all know that." Marcus nodded. "We just want the truth, the rest we can live with." Her gaze lingered on each of them, warriors, killers, believers. Then she looked down at her rifle again. "All right, we move." The hangar smelled of fuel and steel, the air cold and metallic. A converted cargo plane sat on the runway, blacked-out windows, no insignia. The kind of plane that didn't exist on any manifest. Reeves was waiting beside it, his face drawn, his voice low. You've got 6 hours to target. After that, you're on your own. Riley gave a small nod. You shouldn't have done this, sir. He smiled sadly. I didn't officially. He handed her a folded envelope. If you don't come back, open it before you die, not before. She slipped it into her vest without looking. You think I'll make it that long? He hesitated. You're too stubborn not to. Jake stood by the loading ramp, arms crossed, waiting. I told you to stay, she said. And I told you no, he replied. We do this together. Riley looked at him for a long time. She wouldn't want you here. He exhaled slowly. She wouldn't want you to go alone. There was no arguing with that. The engines roared to life, the wind whipping through the hangar, carrying the smell of jet fuel and inevitability. As they boarded, Riley turned one last time toward Reeves. If this goes wrong. It already did, he said quietly. The plane lifted off under a shroud of night. No radio chatter, no lights, just the hum of turbines and the steady beat of hearts facing the end. Inside, soldiers cleaned their weapons in silence. A few whispered prayers. Derek stared at a photo of his brother. Jake sat across from Riley, watching her, searching for any sign of fear. But there was none, only focus. Finally he spoke. What happens if we fail? She didn't look at him. Then someone else tries. You ever think maybe it's not your responsibility to fix everything? All the time, she said. Then I remember the ones who didn't get a choice. He nodded, quiet for a while. Then that thing Blake said about you being a weapon, is it true? Riley's fingers traced the lines of the rifle in her lap, like a prayer bead. I used to think being human meant being born. Now I think it means being able to choose who you aim at. Doesn't answer the question. She looked up, her green eyes calm and tired. I don't know what I am, Jake, but I know what I'm not. I'm not them. He nodded slowly. Good enough for me. Hours passed. The cargo hold dimmed to red light. Riley sat alone near the rear, flipping through a small set of dog tags, each name etched into her memory. Morrison, Hayes, Chen, Park, Rodriguez, Johnson, Williams. She whispered each one like a vow. When she reached Sarah Morrison, her thumb lingered on the letters. I'm coming, she whispered. Not to save you, just to finish what we started. Jake had fallen asleep against the bulkhead, exhaustion overtaking his grief. In the half-light, he looked peaceful for the first time in years. Riley watched him for a moment, the faintest trace of guilt in her expression. If he knew what she'd really planned, he'd hate her all over again. Because this wasn't a rescue, not really. It was an ending. The pilot's voice broke through the intercom. ETA to target 6 hours. Riley stood, checking her gear again, her movements automatic. Syringes of clear liquid tucked into a pouch. The serum, one final contingency. Marcus Webb approached, frowning. What's that? She didn't look up. Insurance. For who? She didn't answer. The desert stretched beneath them, endless, black, silent. The kind of landscape where truth and lies both disappeared. Riley leaned against the metal wall, eyes closing for a moment. The engine's vibration hummed through her body, syncing with her pulse. She thought of the cave, the screams, the smell of cordite, the silence after the last shot. And then she thought of Sarah's voice, soft, fatting. Tell him I forgive him. Riley's eyes opened again, wet with something she didn't want to name. Forgiveness, it sounded harder than death. She looked at the countdown on her tablet. 47 hours left. Every second felt like a heartbeat she didn't deserve. Jake stirred in his seat, muttering in his sleep. A name, Sarah, always Sarah. Riley turned away. She couldn't afford to feel that now, not when she knew how this story would end. The pilot's voice came again, quieter. We've got incoming feed. Satellite link from Fort Bragg. Priority encryption. Riley frowned, walking toward the cockpit. Who's it from? The pilot hesitated. General Reeves. She took the tablet, opened the file. A video feed flickered to life. Reeves' face, older in the low light, voice heavy with the weight of command. "Matthews," he said, "if you're watching this, I need you to listen carefully. That site you're heading to, it's not just a prison. It's a lab, a continuation of Avatar Protocol." Riley's breath caught. "They're still running it." "Worse," Reeves said. "They're using your DNA. Your recovery made you their proof of concept. They're making more." Her hand tightened around the tablet. "How many?" "Unknown, but we found reference to something called Subject 8. Activation scheduled within 72 hours. Riley's eyes darkened. "Then I won't be too late." Reeves leaned closer. "Don't do this alone." "I already am," she whispered, shutting off the feed. She turned back toward the others, her mind already leaving them behind. In her chest, something steady replaced the fear. A cold kind of clarity, the kind that soldiers mistake for peace. The engines roared louder as the plane descended into darkness, the desert rising to meet them. And for the first time in a long time, Riley Matthews felt weightless. Not because she was free, but because she'd finally accepted what she was flying toward. Not redemption. Not survival. Just the truth. Why did the desert always feel like a graveyard before dawn? The sky was still black when the cargo plane's ramp opened. A rush of cold air swept through, carrying the scent of sand and silence. Below them, the earth stretched for miles, barren, endless, swallowing sound like a secret. 30 seconds, the pilot shouted. Riley checked her harness, her rifle, her comms, everything in order, everything she could control. The rest she'd already given up trying to. Derek stood beside her, pale in the red light. Marcus adjusted his gear, muttering a quiet prayer. Jake said nothing at all. When the green light blinked, they moved. The wind tore at them, freefall over a sea of sand, the horizon bleeding with faint orange as the first trace of dawn cracked open. They hit the ground hard, rolling, silent, practiced. Riley's boots sank slightly into the dust. She rose slowly, scanning the horizon. In the distance, barely visible through the haze, the facility rose like a scar, concrete buried beneath rock, half hidden by the dunes. "Eyes up," she whispered. "We move in pairs, no chatter." They advanced. For 30 minutes there was only wind and the crunch of footsteps. Then movement, a patrol, 4 men. Riley's hand shot up, "Stop." The team froze. She signaled 3 fingers, then 1 sweep left. Marcus and Torres circled wide, silent shadows. A whisper of motion, a flash. 4 bodies hit the sand without a sound. Riley moved forward, collecting their tags, stacking the weapons neatly beside them. It wasn't mercy, it was respect. Jake caught up beside her. "You still do that for them." She didn't look up. Somebody should. By the time they reached the perimeter wall, the sun had risen, low, red, heavy, the kind of light that made everything look like blood. Riley knelt, tracing the cracks in the stone. "Thermal sensors, twin feed, if we cross the wrong point." "Boom?" Derek asked. She nodded. "Boom." He exhaled. "So what's the plan?" Riley pulled a small black device from her vest, pressed it to the wall. A faint hum. "Rewrite the code." Marcus frowned. "You can do that." She didn't answer, just waited. Then a soft click. The light on the sensor shifted from red to green. She smiled faintly. "I helped build this place." They slipped through the breach, one by one, into shadow. Inside, the air changed. Cooler. Recycled. The smell of ozone and metal. Every corridor lined with lights that flickered like they hadn't been maintained in years. Derek whispered, "Looks abandoned." Riley shook her head. "No, they're watching." As if on cue, a voice echoed faintly from a nearby speaker. "Welcome back, Ghost 7." They froze. Riley's jaw tightened. "Blake." The voice laughed, soft, distorted. "You never were good at staying dead." She signaled the team forward, "Keep moving." They advanced through the main corridor, doors sealed with biometric locks, windows frosted opaque. Somewhere behind them, a faint hum grew louder. "Generators," Marcus whispered. Riley shook her head. "Not generators, life support." They reached a large chamber, circular, cold. The kind of place built for things the world wasn't meant to see. And there in the center was a glass cylinder. Inside, suspended in pale blue fluid, was a body. Female, wires snaking from her veins, chest rising slowly with mechanical rhythm. Jake's knees buckled. "Sarah." Riley's heart clenched. She moved closer, careful, scanning the monitors, vital signs, temperature, neural response. Everything stable. Too stable. Jake pressed a hand to the glass, breath shaking. "She's alive. Riley, she's—" "No," Riley whispered. "She's breathing. That's not the same thing." Jake turned, eyes wet. "What did they do to her?" Riley swallowed hard. "Same thing they did to me, only this time they perfected it." She tapped the console, pulling up data. Subject 8, neural integration stage 4, cognitive override active. Jake read the screen, disbelief breaking his voice. "Cognitive override? You mean they—" "They're controlling her," Riley said. "Every move, every thought." He slammed his fist against the glass, then shut it off. Riley's voice hardened. "You think I don't want to? If we kill the power without rebooting her autonomic system, she dies. Then save her. She's not your wife anymore." The words hung in the air like a gunshot. Jake stared at her, breath ragged. "You don't know that." Riley's voice dropped. "I do, because I saw what came after." She touched her chest lightly, where the tremor lived deep under her skin. "They didn't bring us back. They rebuilt us." Jake's voice cracked. "Then why are you still you?" "I fought it." "How?" Her gaze softened. "By remembering who I was before the uniform." He shook his head, desperate. "So what, I'm supposed to just leave her here?" Riley didn't answer. He stepped closer, voice breaking. "You dragged me into this. You made me believe she was alive, and now you're telling me she's better off dead." Her reply came slow, heavy. "I'm saying sometimes saving someone means letting them go." For a moment, he just stood there, silent, broken, refusing to believe what his heart already knew. Then the alarm started. A piercing shriek filled the chamber. Red lights flashed. The door behind them sealed shut with a metallic slam. "Motion sensors tripped," Marcus shouted. Riley spun around, rifle up. "Positions." Figures emerged from the upper balconies, armed, armored, moving with precise synchronization. Not human, not entirely. Their faces pale, expressionless, identical. Derek whispered, "Jesus, what are they?" Riley's voice was hollow. "Us, the next generation." Gunfire erupted. Echoes, smoke, chaos. Riley moved like instinct, precise, cold, efficient. Each shot measured, each breath timed. The serum still gave her the edge, but it came with pain, searing heat through her veins, vision flashing white at the edges. Derek was hit, shoulder torn open. He fell back with a cry. "Tors, get him covered." Bullets tore through the air, sparks from metal, glass shattering, blood on steel. Jake ducked behind a console, firing upward. "How many?" "Too many," Marcus yelled. Then through the noise, a voice echoed again, "Blake. You shouldn't have come, Riley. You could have been the future." She shouted back, "I was never yours to build." The floor shook, an explosion somewhere below. A backup generator kicked on. The fluid chamber flickered with light. Sarah's eyes opened. Jake froze. "Sarah." Riley turned. "No, don't." But it was too late. Sarah Morrison's eyes glowed faint blue. Her body convulsed, then stilled. The monitors spiked. Riley took a step back. "They activated her." Jake stared, horrified. "Activated? What does that mean?" She's their failsafe, their weapon. Sarah's eyes shifted to him. Recognition, pain, then something else. Her hand pressed against the glass, trembling, struggling, human for 1 second. Then the mechanical hiss of release. The chamber opened. Steam and light poured out as she stepped forward, unsteady but alive. Jake whispered, "Sarah." She looked at him, voice trembling with static. "Jake." He reached for her. "It's me, I'm here." Riley moved fast, pulling him back. "Don't. Let me." "She's not in control." Sarah's head tilted slightly as if hearing something far away. Then her voice changed, cold, monotone. "Ghost 7, directive, terminate." Riley's heart stopped. "They coded me as the target." Sarah moved, too fast, too precise, a blur of motion that was more machine than person. Riley barely dodged the first strike, the impact cracking the wall behind her. Jake screamed her name. Riley didn't want to fight, didn't want to aim, but Sarah came again, faster, stronger. "Stop," Jake shouted. "Sarah, it's me." For a split second, something flickered in Sarah's face, confusion, sorrow. Then it was gone. Riley raised her weapon. The tremor in her hand was violent now, like her body knew what her heart refused to. She fired. The round hit Sarah in the shoulder, not fatal, just enough to stagger her. Sarah looked down, then up again, eyes flickering machine blue fading to human brown. "Riley." "I'm sorry," Riley whispered. Jake grabbed her arm. "No." Riley shook her head, tears streaking through dust. "She's gone, Jake." Then, before anyone could stop her, she fired again, center mass. Sarah stumbled, falling into Jake's arms, breath shallow. For a moment everything went silent. The alarms, the gunfire, all of it faded into the background. Sarah's lips moved, voice faint. "Tell him I remember." Then her eyes went still. Jake held her tight, shaking, whispering words that never reached her ears. Riley turned away. She couldn't watch him break again. The battle outside grew louder, more approaching, no time for grief. Marcus shouted from the hall, "We've got company." Riley took one last look at the body on the floor, the woman who had once been the reason for everything. Then she whispered, "Forgive me," and moved toward the sound of gunfire. Outside, the sun had risen. Bright, harsh, unforgiving. And somewhere beneath it, the countdown continued. How many times can the same moment break a person? The sound of Sarah's last breath still echoed in Riley's ears as the hallway filled with smoke and gunfire. Every step forward felt heavier than the one before. Not because of wounds, because of what she had just done. Behind her, Jake carried Sarah's body, refusing to let go even when Marcus shouted for him to move. His face was a storm, grief, rage, disbelief, all fighting for space. Riley didn't try to stop him anymore. Some pain couldn't be ordered away. "Main corridor clear," Derek's voice cracked through the comms. "They're falling back toward the lower labs." Riley pressed her back to the wall, breath sharp. "Copy that, Webb, flank left, Morrison." But Jake wasn't listening. He laid Sarah gently against the wall, brushed a hand over her face, closing her eyes. Then he picked up his rifle. Riley turned. "Jake, don't." He looked at her, eyes hollow. "You don't get to tell me that anymore." Before she could speak again, he was already moving down the hall, toward the fire and the screams. "Damn it," she muttered, pushing off the wall. "Marcus, cover him." The team pushed forward through the labyrinth of corridors. Each one the same, concrete, steel, ghosts of men who once thought they were gods. The facility wasn't just a prison. It was a grave. And somewhere in the center, behind blast doors and bulletproof glass, the man who'd built it waited. Blake. Every turn brought new bodies, guards, clones, whatever they were, lying motionless, their eyes open but empty, like someone had simply switched them off. "EMP ripple," Riley muttered. "System collapsing." They reached the core chamber, massive, circular, lit by 1,000 flickering screens. Servers lined the walls, humming like a dying heartbeat. In the center stood Blake, perfectly calm, coat immaculate despite the chaos around him. He smiled as they entered. "You found her, didn't you?" Riley's voice was low. "You turned her into something that wasn't hers to be." Blake's smirk didn't fade. "I perfected her, I perfected you." Jake raised his rifle, shaking with rage. "You killed her." Blake looked at him, unbothered. "She was already dead. You just didn't have the courage to admit it." Jake fired a single desperate shot. It hit the console beside Blake, sparking wires and glass. Blake didn't even flinch. He turned to Riley. "Do you have any idea what we accomplished here? You're not an abomination. You're the next step. You think dying for flags and names means something. It doesn't, but living beyond them, that's evolution." Riley's eyes narrowed. "You call this evolution, turning soldiers into slaves." "Into weapons," Blake corrected. "Weapons don't question, they don't break, they don't feel." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Then why am I still standing?" He stepped closer. "Because you're the one who worked. The serum failed in everyone else. But you fought it. You adapted. You're the proof that pain and purpose can coexist." Riley's jaw tightened. "You built monsters, Blake, not soldiers." He smiled faintly. "And monsters win wars." Jake lunged before she could stop him, slamming Blake against the console, gun pressed to his temple. "Give me one reason not to end you." Blake didn't even blink. "Because if you do, you'll never find out where the rest of them are." Riley froze. "The rest?" Blake turned his head slightly toward her. "You think this place was the only site? There are 6 more, all operational, all running your DNA." She felt her stomach drop. "You're lying." He smiled. "Am I? We replicated the original sample. The others' versions of you are already in field testing." Riley stepped forward, her trembling hand gripping the rifle tighter. "Where?" Blake's voice softened. "Help me out of here and I'll tell you." Jake's finger hovered on the trigger. "Don't believe him." Riley's voice was quiet. "If he's telling the truth." "Then what?" Jake snapped. "You hunt your own copies. You keep killing until you're the last one left." She looked at him, eyes shining with something deeper than anger. "Until it stops." The floor shook suddenly, an explosion from below. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The servers sparked, the lights flickered. Marcus shouted, "We've got detonations in the lower levels. We need to move." Blake smiled wider. "You'll never make it out in time, but I can." Riley aimed her rifle at him. "Then start talking." He raised his hand slightly calm. "You really want to know? Fine. The next facility in northern Yemen. And the prototype there, Subject 9, she's already active. She's better than you, Riley, faster, colder. And she doesn't have a conscience to slow her down." Riley's breath came sharp. "You're lying." "I never lie," Blake said. "That's how you make people doubt themselves." The explosion below grew louder, flames licking the metal floor, heat building fast. Jake shouted, "We need to go now." Riley didn't move. "There's one thing you forgot about evolution, Blake." He raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" She fired. The round hit him square in the chest. He staggered back, shock breaking through the calm. Blood bloomed through his shirt. "Sometimes," she said softly, "nature rejects what doesn't belong." He fell to the floor, gasping, still smiling even as the light left his eyes. "They'll never stop." Riley stared down at him. "Neither will I." The chamber shook violently. "Evac now," Marcus yelled. Jake grabbed Riley's arm. "Move." They ran through collapsing hallways, smoke turning the air thick and choking. Derek carried Tors, wounded but conscious. Every corridor felt like it was closing in, like the building itself wanted to bury its sins. They reached the exit hatch, sunlight spilling through cracks in the structure, as the desert Tor itself opened behind them. "Go, go," Riley shouted. They burst out into the open, diving behind a ridge just as the facility erupted. A wall of fire roared skyward, the ground trembling beneath them. Sand rained down like ash. Silence followed, the kind of silence that carried finality. Jake lay on his back, staring at the sky. Is it over? Riley sat beside him, rifle still in her hands, eyes fixed on the flames. No, it's never over. Marcus limped closer. We got what we came for, didn't we? Riley's voice was barely a whisper. We lost what we came for. No one spoke for a while. The desert wind carried the smoke away, leaving behind nothing but emptiness. Jake finally turned his head. You said there were others. Riley didn't look at him. There are. And you're going after them. Yes. He laughed softly, bitterly. You can't keep doing this alone. She looked at him then, eyes hollow but resolute. I already am. Marcus knelt beside Derek, checking his wound. We've got maybe 2 hours before someone sends a recon drone. We need to move. Riley nodded slowly. Go, head west. There's an airfield 30 clicks out. Tell Reeves, tell him the project's burned. What about you? Marcus asked. I'm not going with you. Jake sat up. Don't start this again. I have to finish it, she said. Blake's files are gone, but if there's a copy, someone's got to find it before they activate the others. Then we go together, Jake said. She shook her head. You've done enough. He grabbed her arm. I lost her once. I'm not losing you too. Riley's voice cracked just slightly. You never had me, Jake. You had what the mission needed. He stared at her, realizing for the first time that she wasn't just leaving, she'd already left. He exhaled, defeated. Then at least take this. He handed her a folded patch, Sarah's old insignia. She'd want you to have it. Riley took it, her fingers brushing the stitched fabric. For a moment her face softened, the soldier fatting, the woman beneath flickering through. Thank you, she said quietly. He nodded, stepping back. You come back, Riley, you hear me? She didn't answer. The sun hung high now, burning down on the smoking ruin behind them. Riley turned toward the horizon, endless sand and silence. Every step away from the team felt like shedding another piece of herself. She didn't know what waited out there, truth, redemption, or just another ghost wearing her face. But she walked anyway. Because some wars don't end when the shooting stops. They end when you stop pretending you can live with what you've done. And she wasn't ready to stop pretending yet. What if the monster you're chasing has your face? 3 days, 3 countries, no rest, no voice on the radio but her own. Riley Matthews moved like a shadow across the borderlands, a rifle on her back, sand caked in her boots, silence for company. The desert was different here, coarser, darker, like even the land didn't want to remember what it had buried. Each night she camped without fire, the stars sharp and infinite above her. She stopped sleeping somewhere over Yemen. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Sarah, not as she was, but as she'd become, breathing through machines, fighting a war inside her own skin. On the 4th dawn, she reached it. The second sight. From a distance, it looked like nothing, just another abandoned oil compound carved into the rock. But up close, the details whispered the truth. Reinforced concrete, hidden cameras, a hum beneath the surface that didn't belong to wind or wires. She knelt, brushing her fingers against the dust. It was still warm. Someone was home. She moved in silent, methodical arcs, disabling perimeter sensors, rerouting heat signatures, cutting power one grid at a time. She didn't need blueprints. Her instincts remembered what her mind didn't. Inside, the corridors were almost identical to the first sight, sterile, humming, endless, except quieter, too quiet. She advanced carefully, rifle up, breath steady. Every shadow looked familiar. Every echo sounded like her own. At the center of the complex, she found it, the control chamber. But this time there was no Blake, no guards. Just a single chair. And someone sitting in it. Riley stopped. The woman turned her head slowly, the same green eyes, the same scars, but smoother, younger, more symmetrical somehow. Subject 9, Riley whispered. The other woman smiled faintly. You made good time. Her voice was the same too, softer, controlled, like Riley, but stripped of fatigue, guilt, hesitation. Riley's hand tightened on her weapon. You know who I am. Subject 9 tilted her head. You're who I was supposed to replace. Riley exhaled slowly. So it's true, they cloned me. No, 9 said simply. They copied you, there's a difference. The two of them stood in silence for a moment, mirror images shaped by the same pain. Finally, Riley asked, what did they tell you? That I was the future, 9 said. That you were the flaw, that emotion makes soldiers weak, that empathy makes us hesitate. Riley took a step closer. And you believe that? 9's eyes glimmered. I don't believe anything, I execute. Then why are you talking to me? For a moment the perfect calm cracked, a flicker of something, curiosity, maybe even doubt, because I wanted to see what broken looks like. Riley studied her face, her posture, her precision. It was unnerving, seeing yourself stripped of all the things that made you human. She said softly, you don't feel anything, do you? 9 smiled slightly. Feeling is a liability. That's what they said about us too, Riley murmured, until it got them killed. 9 stood, slow, deliberate. You think you destroyed the project. You didn't. You only confirmed it worked. Riley raised her weapon. Where are the others? 9's voice was calm, almost gentle. Gone, terminated. I'm the only one left. That's not true. 9 smiled again, the same faint, knowing curve Riley used to give before pulling a trigger. You really think they'd stop at me? Riley's heart sank. How many? 9 tilted her head. Enough to rebuild an army. The lights flickered. A faint hum grew from the walls, data streams, upload signals. Riley turned to the console, seeing the screens fill with cascading code. They're transmitting, she realized. 9 stepped closer. To the next site, continuation protocols. Even if you kill me, it won't matter. We're already everywhere. Riley's voice dropped, almost a whisper. Then I'll keep going until I find every last one. 9's expression didn't change. You can't kill your own evolution. Riley's rifle didn't waver. Watch me. 9 smiled softly. That's the difference between us. You still think killing fixes things. A blur of motion too fast to track. 9 lunged. Riley barely dodged the strike, her weapon clattering across the floor as 9 drove her backward into a console. Sparks exploded around them. 9's strength was unreal, precise, efficient, every movement calculated. Riley fought back using instinct, pain, memory. She'd been trained for chaos. 9 was trained for perfection. Chaos had to win. The fight tore through the room, metal bending, glass shattering, breaths coming in ragged bursts. Riley managed to grab a shard of glass, slashing across 9's shoulder. Blue fluid sprayed, not blood, something colder. 9 looked down at the wound, curious rather than pained. That's interesting. Feels different when you bleed, doesn't it? Riley spat. 9 smiled faintly. Not really. She slammed Riley into the wall, forearm pressing against her throat. You're obsolete. Riley's hand reached toward her vest, the last syringe of serum. The same one she swore she'd never use again. Her voice rasped, maybe. She jammed the needle into her own neck. The world slowed. Every sound warped, every heartbeat louder. Her vision sharpened until she could see the pulse under 9's skin. Pain flared, then vanished. 9's eyes widened for the first time, surprised. You can't handle that dose. Riley's voice was steady. Watch me. She broke free, the strength unnatural, brutal. The next punch sent 9 flying into the console. Circuits exploded, lights bursting in white heat. Nine staggered up, half her face burned, wires exposed beneath the skin. "You'll die doing this." "Maybe that's what living looks like," Riley said. Nine lunged again, but this time Riley was ready. She moved with precision, not rage. Every hit clean, every motion deliberate. The fight ended in silence. Nine dropped to her knees, breath shallow. Why fight so hard to stay broken? Riley lowered her weapon slowly. "Because I remember what it feels like to hurt, and that's how I know I'm still human." Nine's voice softened. "Humanity is a disease." "Maybe," Riley whispered, "but it's the only thing that ever made us more than weapons." She pulled the trigger. Nine fell back, lifeless, her reflection starring up from the floor, the same face, now still. Riley stood over her, chest heaving. The adrenaline faded, leaving only pain. The serum burned inside her, veins glowing faintly blue. She could feel her organs shutting down, her body failing. She stumbled to the console, coughing. Data streams still flickered. She keyed in a command, overriding transmission. The screen flashed. "Containment override / site destruction in 10:00. "Good enough," she muttered. Then she saw it, a camera feed, active. General Reeves, his face pale, voice urgent. "Matthews, we have your location. You need to move now." She smiled faintly. "Always too late, General." "Don't do this," he pleaded. "We can extract you." Her voice was soft. "You can't extract what's already gone." He shook his head, anger and grief twisting his features. "You were supposed to survive." "I did," she said, "just not the way you wanted." The connection cut. Riley looked down at Nine's body, her own face staring back in lifeless calm. Then she whispered, "Guess one of us had to end it." The countdown hit 8 minutes. She moved through the corridors again, slower now. Each step felt like walking through water. Her breath came ragged. The serum's glow under her skin pulsed brighter, spreading. Outside, the desert waited, golden, silent, endless. She collapsed to her knees, coughing blood into the sand. Her vision flickered. The world felt too bright, too peaceful. She looked up at the horizon, the same sky she'd parachuted under, the same silence she'd buried her ghosts in. She thought of Sarah, Jake Reeves. And for the first time in years, she wasn't angry. She was just tired. The explosion came quietly, a deep rumble beneath the earth, then a bloom of light rising into the dawn. The shockwave rolled across the desert, gentle as a sigh. And when it faded, there was only wind. Only silence. Only the faint shimmer of heat over the dunes, where one soldier had finally stopped running from herself. What do you do when the war finally stops following you? Weeks passed before the dust settled. The satellite images showed nothing but glassed earth where the compound had been. No bodies, no signals, just a crater shaped like an unanswered question. At Fort Bragg, the file on Operation Nightfall was stamped closed. But General Reeves didn't believe in closure. He kept a copy of Riley's dog tags on his desk, beside a photo of a younger unit smiling in uniforms they hadn't yet learned to hate. Jake Morrison came home in silence. The world thought he'd been rescued. The news called him a survivor. He didn't correct them. He spent his mornings at the range, his nights staring at an empty chair across from him. Sometimes, when the wind rattled the windows, he swore he could still hear her voice. Then one morning, Reeves called him in. "There's something you need to see." He handed Jake a small black drive, recovered from satellite debris, its casing scorched, the label faded. Only one word remained legible: ghost. They watched the footage together in a dark briefing room. Riley appeared on the screen, dirt-streaked, exhausted, eyes clear. She was speaking into her helmet cam, voice calm, steady, already halfway gone. "If you're seeing this, it means the lab's gone. Good. That means I did something right for once." A pause, a small, weary laugh. "Blake was wrong. We weren't made to be perfect. We were made to choose. That's what they couldn't engineer: choice. The power to say no, even when it costs everything. She looked away for a moment, as if watching the horizon we would never see. I used to think strength was about surviving. Now I think it's about remembering what didn't. Her hand lifted, showing a patch Sarah's insignia. She fought to come home. I fight so nobody else has to. The image flickered, audio crackling through static. If someone finds this, tell Jake I kept my promise. I brought her home, just not the way we hoped. Her eyes softened. And tell the next ones, the ones they try to build after me, that dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. The feed ended. For a long time, no one spoke. Jake sat perfectly still, fists clenched, eyes fixed on the frozen frame of her face. She knew, he whispered. She knew she wasn't coming back. Reeves nodded slowly. She never planned to. Jake leaned back, breath shaking. She ended it. Reeves looked at the screen again. For now. Jake frowned. What do you mean, for now? Reeves reached into a folder, slid a photo across the table, satellite imagery of a mountain range far from any border. In the center, a heat signature. Small, steady, human. Signal pinged 2 days ago. Genetic match, 92%. Jake stared at it. You think she's alive? Reeves gave a tired smile. I've learned not to bet against ghosts. Jake looked back at the screen one last time. Riley's face frozen mid-smile, eyes alive even in death. He whispered, if she is, she's out there alone. Reeves replied quietly, no, she's never alone. She's what's left of all of them. Outside, dawn crept across the base. The first light hit the windows, catching the dust in the air like slow-falling snow. Jake walked out into it, the dog tags in his hand warm from his grip. He could almost hear her again, that soft, steady voice that carried 1,000 miles through silence. Don't mourn me, finish it. He looked toward the horizon. For the first time in years, it didn't look empty. Maybe she was gone. Maybe she was. Maybe ghosts don't vanish, they just trade battlefields. The wind shifted, carrying the faint echo of a rifle shot somewhere far away. Jake smiled. Still perfect, he murmured. He slipped the tags over his neck and kept walking, one more soldier chasing the sound of something worth believing in. And in the desert, beneath the same relentless sun, the heat shimmered over a single footprint half buried in sand, smaller, lighter, still fresh. Because some wars don't end. They just learn your name. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.